Hi, so this is part two of the horror behind horror stories. Okay. So, like I said, how much of what we then portray as horror stories is a result of beings from beyond our perception range, beings from other dimensions, beings that we share this planet with, but which we are not able to perceive with our five senses, reacting in anger towards what humans do, towards the ridicule that humans do. Also, towards the theft that humans commit of their natural habitats like forests and the oceans, the destruction of their natural habitats. What if when mermaids become angry and attack humans, it's because their families were made sick or even killed by an oil spill deep at the bottom of the ocean that happened because humans just are careless in how they conduct themselves, you know? Or and this is portrayed, this idea is portrayed. And what I find interesting is that adult movies are the ones that will portray the horror of the reaction of these beings, but then you'll find in kids movies you'll actually be given a bit of a story as to why these beings become so angry. So these two movies, well, three, but yeah, that I will touch on, that basically, discuss the why. So there's one is Moana, right? Where um the demigod Maui steals the heart of the creator goddess Tefiti, and then she becomes an angry being who is basically like a human volcano, or a goddess who turns into like this volcano of death, right? And she starts to spread this blight, which is like this black goo that's like killing things on the island that Moana and her family live on. And then her grandmother tells her that no, this can only be cured if the goddess Tefiti, her heart is returned to her because she's angry that her heart was taken away from her, you know. And then another one that talks about this type of thing is a Japanese anime called Princess Mononoke, where it starts off with a boar, a giant boar. He's like a god of the forest, but he gets shot um, with an iron bullet. It's like a ball of iron, and it lodges itself in his heart, I think. And then he turns into what the movie calls a demon, but an angry, angry, angry spirit. And he's got this black goo that comes out of him. So he's attacking the villages and like wreaking havoc, and he's angry with human beings, right? Because a human did this to him. So he was a peaceful, loving, gentle spirit, but this thing caused him so much pain that he turned bitter and angry, right? And then this prince is now fighting him. This is how the movie opens, and this black goo gets onto the prince's arm and starts to make him, like rot, basically, but it's a spiritual element as well. So it also starts to affect his consciousness. But he's a very pure hearted person. And he then goes on a quest to find the origin of this ball, this metal ball that caused this ball to turn from what he was into this very angry and destructive being. And it's the same thing with Tefiti and Moana, right? So this is giving you the horror behind the horror story. And it's like, what are humans doing to this planet and to the other beings that is causing these weird supernatural or supernatural activities to happen that people then say it's something horrifying, and then they make a horror movie about it. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, you know we have to, I talk about this, you know in previous videos, that we have to become much more mature as human beings. We have to become much more mature. We can't be like little kids who say, just because I say so, that's how it is. It is because I say so. That's living in an illusion. You're creating illusions, and then you expect the world to function based on your illusions. It doesn't work. We need to be functioning based on truth. And the truth is that we are not alone on this planet. This is not our planet. We didn't make this planet. We're here, and we have to live here with respect, right? So there's another movie called Spirited Away, also Japanese, by Miyazaki. Um, and it talks about this little girl whose parents go into the grounds of an ancient Japanese shrine, and just strange things start happening. She gets separated from them, and then she ends up like in a spiritual city, and she has to work in the baths there. But during the course of her work, now she's a very innocent soul. And this is another thing. Like, if you look at Moana, she's innocent. That's why she's able to return the heart to Te Fiti. And when she returns Te Fiti's heart, Te Fiti goes back to being her nurturing mother, goddess, creator self. She's no longer this angry volcano being. She's now back to being beautiful Mother Earth, green, with plants and flowers growing out of her body, right? So in this story, the character, her name is Chihiro, but in the spiritual world, she gets given the name Sen, and she's told she mustn't tell anyone her real name. Okay, there's a lot of like symbols and consciousness elements. Very interesting. Anyway, so she meets a character called No Face, and No Face reveals him or herself to be someone who was very much deprived of love, and then this turns her, I think it's a her personally, even though I think it's voiced by a man, but I think it's a her, turns her into someone who seeks to buy people's love and affection. But when she sees that instead of love and affection, she's just being used, because she produces gold. She's just able to produce what looks like gold. It turns out to be mud later, but it looks like gold initially. So she casts an illusion over people, but she's giving them this gold, and they're just taking it, and she's thinking she's buying their love, but she realizes that no, they're just using her. And then she goes like absolutely berserk and starts eating people. But then Sen, because she helped a river god, gets given this magical substance, which she basically feeds to No Face when No Face is rampaging and eating people and going nuts, and then No Face ends up vomiting everyone and all the food she'd been eaten and everything. And it just shows you like No Face had been so deprived of love that her identity was erased, and that her heart, because it had been deprived of love, became basically like a bottomless pit that could not be filled with anything that was not love. So she was trying to fill it with people's like admiration and validation and praise, but it wasn't based on love. It was based on people just wanting to get something material from her. And then it was only when Sen gave her this substance, which she got from this river god for helping this river god, that No Face was able to heal, right? Because Sen was the only person who also didn't try to use No Face. She didn't want anything from No Face. She was like, no, we're cool. I don't need your gold, you know. So this is the horror behind the horror story. You have human beings exploiting the earth, making trophies out of the heart of a goddess, making trophies out of the richness of the earth, the beauty of the earth, exploiting the earth, shooting down beings who are beneficial to the earth, who are guardians of the forest, And then also, because we are able to do that to the earth and her inhabitants, we do it to each other. We erase the identity. How many children have grown up with their identities erased by their parents because their parents were not interested in raising a human being? They were interested in raising a carbon copy of themselves through whom they would live their lives, through whom they would experience life, through whom they would create a little trophy child who would make them look good to the society. And then when that person turns out depressed, becomes an addict, becomes even an angry sociopathic person, people focus on the symptom, the drugs and the sociopathy, but they don't look at the horror behind the horror that they're looking at.